Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I will say the exchange between my friend, Senator Booker, and Ms. Gupta made me sad about what's being told to young people, because we heard an extended conversation about what's called implicit racial bias and how apparently everyone is guilty of this. We heard a discussion about how African-American police officers are apparently afflicted with implicit racial bias. Ms. Gupta at one point said to Senator Booker, and it was such an astonishing statement, I wrote it down word for word. She said to Senator Booker, "You and I and everyone else share implicit racial bias." And I think this is a falsehood that is being sold to young people that diminishes the evil that is racism. It diminishes the bigotry that we find in Nazis and the Klan. Ms. Gupta talked about her father coming as an immigrant. My dad came as an immigrant from Cuba as well, with $100 in his underwear. Bigotry and racism are real. And when the left tells America everyone in America is racist, that does real damage to the important fight to combat bigotry that we have seen from the dawn of this country and indeed from the dawn of time. When you see every American as harboring implicit racial bias, one can advocate for that as an academic, one can advocate for that as a partisan advocate, but you're nominated to be the #3 official at the U.S. Department of Justice. And one area that gives me real concern, Ms. Gupta, is in the area of free speech and the censorship we see from big tech. You were one of a handful of individuals invited to have dinner with Mark Zuckerberg to discuss the growing problem we've seen of big tech censorship, silencing voices that Silicon Valley billionaires disagree with. And the dismaying thing is what's been publicly reported about that meeting is not that you urged Mr. Zuckerberg and others in tech to protect free speech, to have a free and fair marketplace of ideas, but precisely the opposite. From what's been publicly reported, the quote that's been reported from this, in fact, you tweeted this, was Mark Zuckerberg doesn't know what the First Amendment is for. He thinks it's a floating right that carries no responsibilities. That seems to suggest that you want big tech to censor more speech rather than less speech. Would that be a good direction in this country?
Senator, I have fiercely defended freedom of speech. I've worked for an organization that has often been criticized for being so fierce in its defense of all free speech. I also believe that any type of viewpoint discrimination is an anathema to this country. It is unconstitutional, plainly. My engagement with Facebook was one...
Ms. Gupta, if I could ask you, have you defended speech of someone you disagreed with? Have you ever defended the speech of pro-life advocates? Have you ever defended the speech of pro-Second Amendment advocates? Or is it just the people that politically agree with you whose free speech rights should be protected?
Senator, as you know, the American Civil Liberties Union... I'm
asking about you personally, not more broadly others.
I haven't been a free speech lawyer myself. I have advocated alongside free speech at the ACLU and at the Civil Rights Division, yes.
So can you point to any instance of your defending the free speech rights of someone you disagreed with?
I'm sure that I did. The Civil Rights Division doesn't have a federal statute on this. I would welcome, actually, Senator, so that I don't misspeak, an opportunity to respond in writing.
I would welcome a response in writing. Let me just ask a simple question. Should big tech be censoring more or censoring less?
I think we want to ensure that we have free speech and a free internet while understanding the responsibility that social media has in propagating and radicalizing terrorists online.
Okay, let me try again. Is big tech engaged in too much censorship or too little censorship?
I'm not sure. I know which side of the ledger you're talking about. They have community standards that they are not enforcing at many of these companies that are creating a lot of problems around issues in our democracy. For a long time, Facebook was allowing unlawful ad targeting in housing ads and using Section 230
I guess I'm
as a
concerned
shield.
if you're saying that you want them enforcing community standards when you began this exchange with Senator Booker by saying everyone in America has implicit racial bias, and you now want big tech, Silicon Valley billionaires with monopolies to enforce standards that just happen to coincide with the political views you have. Here's another area. You've called the Keystone Pipeline dirty and dangerous.
Senator,
do you agree that pipelines continue to be the safest mode of transport to transport our oil and gas natural resources?
Senator, I don't recall that specific language, but obviously, if I am confirmed, I will oversee the Environmental and Natural Resources Division, right, and don't want to make prejudgments about factual issues related to that. Again, I will be enforcing federal law per the facts and the law of any particular pipeline or anything else.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think we're coming to a close of this hearing. I saw your kids were doing pretty well there. They're taking a break, Ms. Gupta, but they've been great and quite well behaved, I report. First, something that I don't think we've talked about much, the Violence Against Women Act, and I am very much looking forward to working with the chairman on this bill. And of course, a major priority for the president because of his work on this when he was in the U.S. Senate. Can you commit to working with us to make sure we reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act in Congress?
Yes, Senator. I believe that VAWA needs to be reauthorized. The Justice Department, as you know, plays a really important role in fighting violence against women and supporting crime victims. And I believe it's incredibly important legislation that needs to be reauthorized.
And this has, in the past, tended to be a very bipartisan bill. And just as a note for the record here, just Senator Murkowski and I, with Senator Casey, led a letter just recently with 38 senators calling for additional funding because of the pandemic. As you know, there's been an uptick in violence-related calls and rape crisis center calls during the pandemic. And I hope that will go into our thinking as well as we work on the Violence Against Women Act. And I know you have a strong record of standing with us on that.
Yes, Senator. Okay,
very good. I guess we talked about, well, maybe I'll do a little more things in the criminal area and then end with antitrust. Conviction integrity units, something I worked way back when I was a prosecutor with the Innocence Project. You know some of this on videotape interrogations and the like. And I've long supported federal funding for conviction integrity units to help states to review legal cases. Judge Garland expressed support for these programs, and last October, actually, our state received a grant from the Trump Justice Department to form a new conviction integrity unit in partnership with the Great Northern Innocence Project. Could you just quickly give me your views on federal grants on conviction integrity units?
Well, as somebody who has worked on cases where people have had their convictions overturned, these kinds of units, I believe, are incredibly important. It's been heartening to see prosecutors' offices around the country adopt this. I am glad to hear that the Office of Justice Programs has already had support for these types of offices, and I think they will help build trust in our legal system, and something that I would hope to support.
Very good. Also on the related to that, but a little different in terms of justice, is treatment programs. You've heard my story of my dad. It was treatment that gave him a new life and our family a new life after he struggled with alcoholism most of my time growing up. And we've now gotten to have federal drug courts. I was really proud of the work we did in our county on one of the most successful major county drug courts. But could you talk about your views on diverting nonviolent drug offenders to treatment rather than incarceration?
Senator President Biden has also spoken about the importance of alternatives to incarceration for people with substance use disorders. It is something that I have spent my life working on to ensure that there's available community-based drug courts, drug treatment facilities, and I think that would be a shared priority for the Justice Department. And we certainly also want to ensure that Office of Justice Programs does a lot of data and research and evaluation, that the Justice Department, if I'm confirmed, is using evidence-based practices in this regard to help support communities as best as possible.
Thank you. My promise on antitrust. Ms. Monaco, newsrooms, as you know, are shrinking across the country, and part of this is the issue that content providers, people who write for a living, reporters, aren't adequately compensated, and big tech has so much control over online. We saw this erupt in Australia recently, where 2 tech companies literally were threatening to leave the marketplace because they had the power to do it instead of negotiate on the price of content. So Senator Kennedy and I are reintroducing legislation this week that actually David Cicilline is also leading in the House, and we've had support for the bill by Chairman Durbin, as well as Mitch McConnell was on the bill last time, and I'm just asking you to look at this, because part of doing something on antitrust is to even the playing field, and this is a glaring area where we're having issues in our country with this is not the only reason, but it is one of the major reasons because of loss of advertising revenue and the like. And I wondered if you'd commit to look at that bill.
I'd be happy to, Senator. I mean, the issues around consolidation that you have led on a bipartisan basis are very important, and I'd be happy to take a look at that bill and work with you on it if I'm confirmed.
Okay, and then I have a series of questions on antitrust. I can see the chairman raising his eyebrows that I will ask on the record, including looking at back at some of the acquisitions like Instagram and WhatsApp and some other things. But
chùm khế ngọt cho con trèo hái mỗi ngày. Quê hương là đường đi học, con về giờ bướm vàng bay. Quê hương là con diều biếc, tuổi thơ con thả trên đồng. Quê hương là con đò nhỏ êm đềm của nước ven sông. Quê hương là cầu tre nhỏ mẹ về non lá nghiêng tre. Quê hương là đêm trăng tỏ hoa cau rụng trắng ngoài thềm. Quê hương mỗi người chỉ một, như là chỉ một mẹ thôi. Quê hương nếu ai không nhớ sẽ không lớn nổi thành người. Quê hương là con diều biếc, tuổi thơ con thả trên đồng, quê hương là con đò nhỏ êm đềm của nước ven sông. Quê hương là câu tre nhỏ mẹ về non lá nghiêng tre. Quê hương là đêm trăng tỏ hoa cau rụng trắng ngoài thềm. Quê hương mỗi người chỉ một, như là chỉ một mẹ thôi. Quê hương nếu ai không nhớ sẽ không lớn nổi thành người. Quê hương là câu tre nhỏ mẹ về